What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Badgers. Great guest tonight. We're going to do some Believe with Rajeev. We're going to talk about what he took away from the launch, plus get into some players leaving, what the Badgers have to do with their roster going forward. All that and more on today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Really do appreciate everybody tuning in. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. As always, we're going to bring Rajeev back on. And everybody, listen, everyone knows what that means.
Badgers winning a national title? Absolutely. Going on Final Four runs? Why not? It's Believe with Rajeev on today's Locked On Badgers.
Never really gets old.
I love it.
So listen, Justin and I did kind of a recap of what we saw at the launch. You blew us off because you were flying. So we never really looped around and got your takeaways from the event, what you saw. So I'm going to just kick it to you. What are some of your big takeaways from the – let's start with the game itself, practice itself, and then we'll move into some other stuff.
Yeah, well, even before that, I just want to say thank you again. I didn't get a chance to thank everyone for coming out. That was an incredible experience for us. We had so much fun. I know that you guys talked about it on Sunday. I was flying. I was in midair during the show. Yeah, it was so good to meet all of you. And I really love just talking Badgers with, like, not when the shows were great, but even the times between the shows and we were just like walking around talking to people, hearing their opinions about stuff. It was great. I mean, we met so many good people. I'm not going to name off because I'm going to forget people, but big shout out to Marty. I mean, that is a huge thing that he did to help us. And, like he managed all that stuff, and say, yeah, sometimes the internet at Scotty Bar wasn't that great, but Marty did such a good job. He had all this equipment. It was so cool. So thank you. And to all the people we met, we had such a blast. We spent a lot of time talking about when we're going to come back, which game we're going to try to come back for this year, because we had such a great experience. So thank you.
Very well said.
But yeah, the game itself, a little shocking. I think the number of turnovers definitely, you could probably, if you were sitting anywhere near me, you definitely could hear me getting really annoyed at a lot of stuff, even though I'm very positive all the time. So I'll start with the positives. A couple takeaways on either side. One, the defense. I mean, the pressure that we got on the quarterback. I think there were 10 sacks in the game. I know the sacks, not real because they're obviously just blowing the whistle, but I thought there was a lot of good speed. The cornerback, the defensive backs, my goodness, Hallman, by far MVP of the game, did a fantastic job. And we got a chance to see our cornerback depth, our safety depth, and what that looks like. There's going to be a lot of good action there. The linebackers and the linemen did really well too. There was a lot of penetration. There was a lot of speed. I think overall they had a great game. We've talked so much about the offense in this offseason and preparing for spring and fall. We haven't talked a ton about it, the defense. And yeah, there's still a great defense. And there's still a lot of good talent on that team. The next thing I'll say is the backups offensively. Like Braden Locke, I think, was the best quarterback of the day. Which was not surprising. I mean, he's had a good job. He's had a great spring. It's surprising that Mordecai threw so many picks, but the offensive backups in general, especially the receivers, McIntosh, Vinny Anthony, all those guys really showed up. And we're seeing that more and more in practice. I mean, look at the amount of weapons that Mike Brown has at his disposal. And even though the offense didn't play as well as we wanted them to, the receivers did really well. I mean, there's a lot of speed. There's a lot of talent there. So yeah, good job on the receivers and overall the offensive backups. And then the last thing off for the good is running game. We have to remember that this is a team that we're a run team. And yes, we've changed a lot of things. We're going to be air raid and we're going to be doing all this cool stuff, but we are still going to rely heavily on Braylon Allen and Ches Malusi those guys running in 6-man boxes. I know you guys talked about this the other night. Wow. Was that just like the seas parting for those guys? So yeah, they're going to have a huge year. We're going to really rely on them. So those are my positives. Quickly on the negatives. Not going to go too much into it. We all know Mordecai. That was rough. A lot of picks. Just overall, look, I'm not worried about it because this is a new offense facing a defense that returned a lot of starters. That is a lot of experience defensively. They're a tough defense to play against. So I'm not concerned about it because you have to spend this time to get ready and to do better and to be ready for the fall. This is not the fall. The spring game doesn't count. It's okay. The last thing negatively, offensive line, especially the second units. I thought there was a lot of leaking coming out of that. And I knew that there's a new blocking scheme and there's a lot of things that are changing. So I get it. But yeah, we got to really clean up the offensive line play, especially just from second team unit. I thought really let a lot in. And yeah, I mean, Mordecai hopefully is better. Sorry, I ranted there for a minute. I had to get all my spring stuff off my chest.
No, it's great, man. It was awesome. We kind of did our rant already, so it's fantastic. I want to talk about it. This actually ties in with one of the points you made, and it's not something that actually Justin and I really talked about, but it's something, Rajeev, you and I talked about in the stands watching it. Hallman was incredible, right? But Hallman was also the cornerback being targeted.
Oh, man.
Right?
You know, we were so focused on CJ Williams, right? So we watched a lot of CJ Williams and the other receivers, and boy, it's like I almost forgot Alexander Smith was playing because no name called, nothing on his side of the field. I mean, it was just, he was just out there being like, all right, seriously, I dare you to throw it to me. I dare you to throw the ball my way. And wow, it's just, you know, when was the last time you could actually think that you've got two lockdown corners? I mean, I could think back to my, you know, the early 90s, or not early 90s, early 2000s when we had guys like Fletcher and Eccles, but we've had some good ones over the years. But that combo could be really special. And the fact that Hallman had 4 picks, but Alexander Smith just was completely blanketing the receivers, not allowing them any speed. We actually watched a couple of plays where we didn't even see the play, you and I, because we were focusing solely on Alexander Smith and what he was doing to CJ Williams. So, yeah, really, really impressive stuff. The cornerbacks, I mean, honestly, even you know, the second teamers played really well, and all the secondary, and Maitre played really well. I was happy to see him and his frame and how big he looked. And yeah, the safeties. I mean, the cornerback depth and the defensive backs in general on this team really, really excite me. And that's not something we've really said a lot in Wisconsin.
Well, especially it's that top group, right? I mean, it's funny. There was a point, as you mentioned, it was somewhere like 2/3 of the way through, we both kind of had this realization of they just don't throw at Alexander Smith. And then we just both shifted away from the play. Justin just kept watching the play. And we just both shifted to Alexander Smith, and we missed entire plays. Like, we were like, Justin, what happened? We were just watching Alexander Smith eat Velcro. And it was just, I don't know if I would call Hallman, and I know I'm not saying you said this, I don't know if I would call him a shutdown guy yet, but I feel so much better about him. Potential,
yeah.
But I think Alexander Smith is potentially like an Iguaну type, an NFL cornerback, right? And those are just, we just haven't had a lot of, even if we're not talking like a Jamar Fletcher first round pick, we haven't had a lot of like second, third, fourth, fifth round cornerbacks. Like, having a guy like that is incredibly important. And I think Alexander Smith could be that guy. Now, some of the concerns come into play with what happens if one of your top 3 corners get hurt, right? Maitre, Hallman, Smith. DeCluna, I thought, had a good practice. He looked good. People seem to like him. Jace Arnold has played quite a bit. I still have some pretty big question marks after that top 3.
Yeah, I mean, when the teams we're going to play in the Big Ten this year, especially when we play teams like Ohio State and even, you know, other teams like Purdue, there's going to be teams that have a lot of weapons out there. And yeah, if there's injuries, there can be problems. There's no doubt about that. But I trust that these guys are getting enough reps and they're doing well. And I think there's enough depth that we should be okay. Yeah, I mean, if we lose a couple, 2, 3 out of that defensive back rotation, yeah, I mean, any team's going to be hurt. But I think I don't feel horrible about it after seeing the spring game, because I did think the second team cornerbacks looked good as well, and the safety. So I'm still okay with where we are depth-wise in that position. I have a question for you. I don't know if you guys talked about this the other night, but one thing that I was focusing a lot on, and we talked about it a little bit in the stands, was special teams. We only saw the kicking. We didn't see any punting, but was really interested to see Vakos and Benzel's kick. And I thought Vakos' leg was very strong. I know there were some misses. I'm not saying they were put him through the uprights, but Vakos hit one from 47 that looked like it would have been good from 60. I mean, like it was right through the uprights. That, I just like the fact that could be something. There's a lot of games. We play close games and we don't talk about it a lot, but the kicking is so important to win these ball games. And I want someone that has that leg. The accuracy certainly is an issue. I mean, it's not, I shouldn't say it's an issue. It's springtime. They're going to get better. But just the sheer leg strength we saw out of him, I think is going to come in very handy this year. What did you think of those guys?
I mean, the one kick you referenced was awesome. It was like the highlight of special teams of that day. He's from 47. Like you said, it was split the uprights. It was probably good from 57. But the rest of it was pretty inconsistent. And I actually, going into the spring game, I mentioned one of my big concerns is the special teams unit, because as much as Vakos kicked at a MAC level school, he has not kicked in front of 70,000 people. He has not kicked in front of a big environment, a night game. You know, you and I were going back and forth earlier. There's a night game at Purdue this year. Not that that's a huge environment, but it's probably bigger than anything he's kicked in.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Purdue, Ohio State's coming to Madison. That's going to be potentially a late afternoon night game. I'm worried about it. I came away seeing inconsistency. Like, leg strength is great, but there were several missed kicks from shorter than 47, both Van Zelst and Baco. So I was a little worried about it going in, and I don't feel better about it coming out, if that makes any sense.
I agree. I mean, I think the leg strength specifically is what I like the positives. I knew that the other side of it's very negative. Certainly, we miss a lot of kicks, but I do just having a little bit more sort of bench strength, if you will, from the kicking. There's a couple kickers who can do the job, and I think that hopefully that'll be improved. I'm being optimistic about it because special teams is just it's a sore spot, and I feel like if we don't do well, it will cost us games. It will cost us games, and hopefully that doesn't happen because we have a lot of high hopes for the year.
Well, Vaco's, to your point, listen, Vaco's, if he's an accurate kicker, he's a weapon for this team because the leg strength is there, right? He will give us something that we haven't had for a while.
Exactly.
He will give us what we hope Vito Calvaruso was going to give us. He'll give us a weapon in close games. And the whole thing with a kicker, man, it changes your offensive play calling. If you have faith in your kicker that can hit from 50, 52, 53, suddenly when you're on the 38-yard line, you don't have to get 9 more yards, right? It can be 3rd and 9, and you can be comfortable handing off getting 2 yards. You know, I'm just saying it changes your offense when you get on that side of the field if you have a good kicker that you're confident in with range. But the accuracy was a little worrisome to me. So we'll have to see. But
let's just, not that this is an excuse, and I'm not saying that, but the weather was crazy, by the way. It was like sunny, and then it was snowing, and then it was windy, and it was a little nutty out there. So, just something to keep in mind.
That is fair. All right, coming up, we're going to talk transfer portal. Badgers lost a couple players, including, to me, a surprise defensive back. Plus, where do we want the Badgers to maybe look in the portal? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a word from our friends of the show over at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack, I've talked about Built Bar a lot, but you don't want all the sugar and calories, and you want the best tasting protein bar on the planet. You got to try Built Bar. If you're like me, you want a healthy snack, something that isn't going to bog you down, something you can throw in your back pocket, your backpack, head to the gym, get a lot of protein, eat a little healthier, but not feel like you're carrying around 300 calories, 400 calories, and not feel like you're eating cardboard. I'm not going to name names, but we all know the protein bars out there where you eat it because of the protein, not because of the taste. It's not Built Bar. What makes Built Bar so good? 100% real chocolate and unbelievable flavors. Churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. I'm not sure how they do it. It tastes like a candy bar. Best protein bar in the world. And now you don't need to wait to get a box. Go to Sam's Club, Walmart. If you go to Walmart, head to the pharmacy section. Grab yourself a box of Built Bars, 4-bar box of cookies and cream. And if you're in Sam's Club, go get the 13-bar box with our hit flavors. You'll thank me later, the best protein bar on the planet. And listen, for the everydayers that listen to us every day, can't tell you how much I appreciate it. If you were here yesterday, you were listening to John Garcia Jr. Today, it's Rajeev. Tomorrow, we're going to dive more into recruiting and football. So if you're one of those everydayers, thank you. Really do appreciate it, and let's keep it going. All right, Rajeev, let's keep talking here. Ayvonne Jones hit the portal today. I want to mention Spencer Lytle. That's a little old. We haven't talked about it. Vito Calvaruso, which shocks nobody. Wish him well. But Ayvonne Jones left today as well. Younger cornerback. A guy I liked a lot. Good frame, good size, had a good offer list. I want to start there. Any surprises there? To me, it hurts the depth. That's a player that I liked as a young player for the next couple of years. He didn't seem to make a lot of noise in spring, though. It felt like he had maybe been jumped by Jace Arnold, Jonas DeCluna. Amari Snowden is still potentially coming, but still a player that I thought was a nice piece, and it's a bit of a hit to the depth.
Yeah, definitely hit to the depth, but also just not surprising. I mean, this is what happens, right? In spring ball, these guys, and now in the age of the transfer portal, you pretty much know going out of spring where you are in the depth chart. How many moves do you really have to make to play in the fall? And if you're not going to play in the fall and you've got an offer list like he had, I think it's a fair move. I'm always upset when we lose people to the transfer portal, but losing people to the transfer portal also means getting people from the transfer portal theoretically, right? So we can go after these guys. So I think that it's okay. And I'm not overly concerned about it because I was happy with what I saw from DeClona and Arnold and the other guys. And obviously we're all really pumped about Snowden. You mentioned him. I think that's a real key part of this. You know, when he announced he was coming here, we all jumped for joy, and it's a huge get for us. So, I'm not really concerned about it there. with Lytle also, I mean, Calvaruso, that's fine. But I don't get too bent out of shape about this because as I look through the transfer portal and who I feel like we need and who we're losing, I feel like our team is okay right now. We're pretty whole, and yeah, it's a little bit of a depth thing here and there, but you're always going to lose people. So if the people that we lost are these guys, I mean, I can live with it, right? Because it would be much more catastrophic if we lost someone who we really were excited about, someone who was getting better playing time in the spring and maybe wasn't on the one line like they wanted to be, but we didn't really see that. So we're losing people that really weren't even playing with the twos. So we're not in a situation where we're losing that much immediate depth.
I agree. I mean, there's no way any of these players you're counting on for this year, right? So you're not losing any immediate depth pieces. If Lytle was a big recruiting win, but he's never really been healthy. He's never been able to find his spot on the field. Ayvonne Jones was a big recruiting win. He wasn't playing this year. He's maybe the 6th or 7th cornerback on the depth chart when you factor in Amari Stone coming in. Amon Williams is kind of playing on that same line as him. He's definitely behind Kluna and Arnold.
And Williams looked good.
Yeah. So these aren't big losses to me. Ayvonne was kind of a personal favorite. I just thought he had a lot of upside. But again, the other part of this is we've seen the staff looking for another transferred cornerback, right? Another specifically transferred cornerback. And you got to wonder if maybe they kind of knew Ayvonne Jones was potentially on the way out. And conversely, if Ayvonne Jones knew they were looking for another cornerback, I feel like all of this is connected.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it makes sense. And through, being with the team and understanding what things they're looking for, you begin to understand the kind of defense that Tressel wants to play. And maybe he felt like he didn't really quite fit in with that. And that's okay. Right. I mean, I don't get too bent out of shape about it. I feel like I understand, I know you liked him and I liked him too. And I think he had a lot of good potential, but I have this thing that just keeps going through my head when every time we see transfer portal stuff and we see people leave and move. I know this sounds silly, but it's in Luke we trust. I honestly just am like, nothing really phases me because what I feel like is being built behind the scenes here. And, okay, for example, the in-state recruiting stuff, right? I mean, the Sexton thing and like, I understand that people are a little bit out of shape about the losing in-state recruits, but I just feel like this guy has a greater plan. And yes, it's because it's believed with Rajeev, and that's probably why I'm saying this, but I'm good with what this guy wants. I'm good with who he wants. I'm good with who he's okay seeing leave. And I just have this feeling that when someone leaves, it's not just because, like they were unhappy. I feel like it's because Fickell probably knows something too. He's like, all right, like this guy, it's okay if this guy leaves and maybe you would be better off somewhere else. And all these guys that have left, I wish them all well. I want them to succeed. I hope to see them do great things, but it's okay that they're not with us because if they're not quite fitting the puzzle pieces the way Luke Fickell wants them, I'm okay with that. Not saying that's exactly what happened, but I tend to believe that everything we're seeing is part of a bigger plan. Yes, that is wishful thinking, but that's just how I feel about Luke Fickell and everything he's doing.
No, that's a totally fair take on it. I don't know if I'm fully there, but I'm still very optimistic with what Luke Fickell is doing. And none of the portal losses have broken me up really much at all. The in-state recruiting is a little weirder to me, I think, than it is to you.
It's year one, right? I mean, it's year one. It's like it's his first time doing this. It's his first cycle here with Wisconsin. So I'm like, I mean, if this is happening 2 or 3 years from now, and we're just continuing to lose all these in-state guys, then you wonder. But I don't feel like it's so early in his tenure. That's just how I think about it.
I don't think you get a lot of leash anymore in college football. Like when you get there, you're expected to start right away, I think. But I don't know. Listen, I don't know. Like, the cycle isn't over, right? I'm not going to sit here and say they're if they want Sexton, they're probably going to stay after him. Nathan Roy is still on the board. Now, that's going to be a tough pull.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to like wrap up this cycle before it's over either and say, and then 2 months later, Sexton maybe flips and Roy's on board and you have Jensen and Booker. And then, was it a bad problem? No, it wasn't then. So I am in a wait and see mode, but I'm a little more bothered about it than you are, I think. But I want to, on the portal side, is there a specific spot to kind of bring this full circle? You mentioned people leave, people come. The portal give it, and the portal take it.
Right.
Is there a spot the Badgers you think need to address after we're coming out of spring? Something that you see as maybe a deficiency in the roster?
It's funny, and again, I'm going to sound like a bit of a homer here, but I don't see a lot of deficiencies in our ones and twos. I feel like, okay, so I think offensively, quarterback, I don't think we have any deficiencies there. Receiver, we don't have any deficiencies there. Running back, depth maybe, but I think it's fine. O-line, I'm okay with it. I think if you're going to get someone maybe like a big splash guy in the O-line, okay, that's something, or maybe add some more depth. Defensively, I would say outside linebackers. I mean, I think the guys played really well. I think that, like we obviously are excited about Petroski and Bowlers looked like a monster out there. I feel like we have good players, but if I'm going to point to something, I'm going to look at outside linebackers and maybe just depth inside, but and obviously D-line. I mean, I think overall the defensive front is where I'm looking. Defensive backfield, I'm not concerned. Offensively, I'm not really concerned about holes, but on the defensive front, that's where we have some concerns. Outside linebacker, pass rushing, defensive tackle, just more people, more bodies, more depth, and maybe a splash get. But Ryan, I don't feel like we have a lot of holes on this team. I don't.
I agree. I agree with you. I think this team is pretty well patched up. I think you need another corner. Like if you can add another veteran corner to insulate against injury. We've talked about this. Like a lot of the Wisconsin-Ohio State game, it turns when a starter gets hurt for Wisconsin, and there's nobody we can put in there to match the backups for Ohio State. It's not like Ohio State players don't get hurt in those games too. The difference is they have depth, they have reserves, they have a backup that can go in and play at a high level. Another cornerback would be enormous, in my opinion. It really would. Ohio State's going to spread us out 4 wide. You're going to lose people throughout the season. Alexander Smith was hurt last year. Both of our transfer quarterback, Dort was hurt for a bit. You have to get more depth there. So I think that's why they're looking. That's one of the things we've talked about. And the other one to me is punter. Now I have no idea, right? Because we didn't see punting. There hasn't been people haven't really been able to watch them punt. But if they go out in the spring and we start seeing scholarships go out to a punter, we're gonna know that there's a need there.
Right.
If they don't make those offers, I feel good about it because then that means they feel good about it. But it wouldn't shock me to see something there. But defensive back to me is the big key. I don't think the running back depth, as you mentioned, is great, but I don't think you're going to find a running back to come in and basically not play.
Be a third teamer, right? Because that's basically what he'd be. I agree on cornerback. I think I like where we are ones and twos, and I think that you're right about depth and insulation. I can totally see that. I don't see it as quite as immediate of a need as the defensive front, but it's 6-1, half dozen the other.
Yeah, and the two work so closely together, right?
Yeah.
If you get a pass rusher, your coverage instantly gets better and vice versa. So they work together. I've talked about the need for an edge rusher on the defense line as well. I'm hoping Varner's that guy, right? Like that's part of the equation that we haven't got to see, that the media hasn't gotten to see. I'm hoping Darian Varner, the transfer in, is that guy. Mm-hmm. I feel like they've already added their piece there, but listen, he's got to get healthy. Aaron Witt, who knows, man? Like we always are wait until this guy gets back. I feel like he's going to keep getting years of eligibility. We're going to be like 57 years old and we're like, he's out of the boot. Let's go.
Seriously. That's a good call on punter. I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, we know Van Dyke's been taking the snaps in practice and he's doing, I believe, kickoff specialist as well. But yeah, I mean, that is something that's interesting. It's one more very small piece of the game, but very, very important. And when you have it's not something you talk about until it's bad, right? Once you have a bad punter, you have a problem. If you have a good punter, you just kind of let it go, right? With last year with Vujic, we're good with it. No problems. If you have a bad punter, you have problems.
Yeah, if you have a punter dropping snaps against, let's say, an Ohio State in big moments, you talk about it then. Not that we need to go back there.
Speaking of snaps, sorry, one more quick thing. You guys mentioned the other day but I haven't been back since spring. The snaps. Oh my gosh, how many snaps were up here on Braden Locke's head, Mordecai? It was just over and over. I was definitely very animated in the stands about it. I know someone commented on your show the other day that they heard me. That definitely was me. I was really, really upset about it. I was like, I mean, and I think the guy, Justin and Ryan and Dylan Graff was there from Badger Notes, and we were all just chatting, watching the game. And there was one point where these guys were all engaged in a conversation, and I was just screaming about the snaps because, like, that's another one. That's 2 in a row. And it was really
arms were flailing. Like it was great. But the answer is Renfro, right? That's I guess why I'm not that worried about it. As long as he's healthy, we're fine.
Totally.
Now, if he's not healthy, there's a transfer portal need right there.
I mean, yeah.
All right, let's take a very quick break, friends of the show. We're going to come back. We got some comments, including one I'm going to direct it at Rajeev, even though it's kind of was targeted towards maybe me and Justin. There's some people thinking we're a little too optimistic after the spring game. I'm going to throw that one at Rajeev coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show and a thank you to everybody listening in. Whether you're on the pod or YouTube, thank you so much. All right, let's get Rajeev back in here. We're going to throw a couple comments up here, buddy. The first one is from, where is it? David V says, funny show. Our predicted starting quarterback throws 3 picks and 6 passes. All is good. And this one's to Justin. If Fickell did not want to put on a show for the fans, he should have not held a spring game. And then David goes on to say, you guys act like everything is roses. Get a grip. I think he said get a grip.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of with you on that. So had I been on the show on Sunday, I probably would have been, this would have directed at me as well. You know, David, I think, look, there's a long way to go till you get to fall. And if you've been following the practices and reading kind of what we've been reading, and we all have been reading, this is not like, I mean, Mordecai looked really bad in the spring game, but it's not like he's looked like that all spring. And yes, it was bad. It was it was very poor. And the amount of interceptions was completely unacceptable, but this is a brand new everything, right? Tanner Mordecai has not played with anyone on that field before spring ball. And he's never played with the receivers, the linemen, everything. It's different. And our defense has been playing together for years. Those guys have been together a long time. There's a lot of experience there. So obviously if the Buffalo game comes here and he throws a couple picks in the first game, then yes, we have a problem, right? But I don't feel like this is instantly going to translate into, a poor year for Mordecai. That being said, I will say that my level of excitement and my level of assurance that we're going to have a great season and we're all going to be up here and all these wins definitely was tempered a little bit. I'm not saying that I'm down on the team, but it's just kind of, you have to remember that everything is new here. And we've talked about how there is some risk associated with when you make changes like this. So there is that risk still there. And maybe it was a little more heightened after that game, but no, I'm not really concerned because it's spring ball and these guys have never played together. It's brand new offense, brand new everything.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this on our show as well. So, Rajeev, you and I are very alike on this point. I will say, though, to David's point, I have heard people say, who cares? It's just a spring practice. I'm not there. I think you should care about every practice.
Right.
David might be reacting a little bit as well to people saying, what does it matter? Spring, no, relax. Like the Aaron Rodgers, like relax. Well, no, like this is a data point. And let's be super honest. If Mordecai came out and he threw for 5 touchdowns and he looked untouchable, would our reaction be like, it's spring, it doesn't matter, a long time? No, we would be.
Yeah, we'd be doing the same thing we did after Mertz in the Illinois game. We'd be like jumping for joy.
Right. So if we would have got excited over one practice, I think it's worthwhile to talk about it when it didn't go well. I think that's a fair point. But I am not overly concerned, as I mentioned, Rajeev. You and I agree on that. I apologize. I forgot to put who made this comment, but do the last group of recruits feel like Chryst level recruits? Rajeev, this one's interesting to me. So you started with the incredible portal additions when Fickell took over. Then you have Metor, who, even though he's a 3-star, feels like a really high pedigree quarterback out of Texas. Steck and Booker, 2 kind of 4-star tight ends. And then you have a couple, 3-star linebackers. You have a mid 3-star receiver, a 3-star offensive tackle in state. I think people expected more. In a sense, does this feel kind of like Chryst level recruiting? And from a ranking standpoint, it kind of looks like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I go back to what Fickell said about getting the nucleus of his team, and like we're not gonna bring in a bunch of 4- and 5-star guys, and I don't think it's bad that for me, it's not really about the ranking of where these guys are right now. It's about him getting specific players to fit his system, because right now he's coming into a whole new school and he's trying to build something. So he needs to build his foundation, and, maybe he doesn't quite know what that looks like yet because he doesn't know what these guys are going to do when they play together. And I just feel like we're getting guys that, yes, they might be more journeyman type players who are going to have to develop, but that's where we've always been a development school. And I don't want that to change. And I feel like it's okay that we're getting these recruits that can grow throughout the program, but more specifically, it's about what system he wants. So I go back to in Luke Fickell we trust. I just feel like let's just give this guy a run at it. And yeah, he just got here. And yes, you know, you mentioned the short leash, but I think he's done everything we wanted him to do. So I feel like let's see how these recruits pan out. And maybe after the product is actually on the field and we've seen what Wisconsin can be with Luke Fickell, that's going to draw in more of those bigger name recruits. So, you know, no one's even seen this guy play yet. I mean, seen this team play under him. So I'm not concerned about it. I really feel like the recruiting cycle is long. It's many months, it's many years, and he'll get into the groove based on what he needs for us.
Yeah, I'm not that worried yet either. I think you hit on a really important point, is that it's hard to sell what you haven't done. Now, Luke Fickell could sell what he's done in Cincinnati, but he hasn't taken the field at Wisconsin yet. So I think there is absolutely a wait and see aspect there. You just put this staff together, right? This staff, even though I think there's a short leash with in-state recruiting, these are still coaches learning the in-state schools, the in-state coaches, the in-state pipelines, right? Starting fresh, because there's no Wisconsin connections with this staff. There's no leftovers other than Casey Ryback on the recruiting department. So I'm not overly worried yet. I think all these players have a level of upside that we didn't always see with the Chryst level recruits too. Even Barry Johnson, who's the lowest rated recruit, like he just won a Rivals MVP, right, at a camp in Ohio. So I'm mostly there with you on this one.
And maybe we're going to be able to see that upside more with a guy like Luke Fickell, right? I mean, some of the guys that we brought under Chryst, maybe Chryst system and everything that was happening with the program the last couple of years, they didn't really shine to their potential. We didn't see what those guys could do, and I feel like, you know, that upside. You brought up a good point. We should be able to see more of that upside now.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we're gonna wrap it up there. He is Believe with Rajeev, as always. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. For everything you guys do to help build the community with us, with that on Wisconsin, and we'll talk tomorrow.